Season is over and your Cardinals locker room is getting you ready for the regular season opener at State Farm Stadium coming up on September 11th. Tonight we're breaking down everything you need to know about this Arizona Cardinals team.
I think their offense, as I said, is Super Bowl caliber. Their defense has to be average.
You'll hear from James Conner, who talks about the added responsibilities of being an RB1 this season.
You know what it's going to take. Being RB1, you got to set the tone. You're the first to set the tone, lead by example.
And with DeAndre Hopkins suspended for the first 6 weeks, we'll discuss how the Cardinals can operate without him, given their tough schedule.
I think I've been prepared for tough moments like this my whole life.
And our fearless predictions for the season, and you get to join in on the conversation as your Cardinals locker room is now open.
Welcome into your Cardinals locker room season preview show. Lena Washington and Luke Liddon on your TVs here. Thank you for joining us to put a bow on the preseason. We've got post-game coverage continuing from Nashville, and you won't find it anywhere else. Much more coming up in this next hour.
Yes, and you will hear from our roster of Cardinals insiders. We're profiling a pair of marquee players on this team's high-powered offense, and we're catching up with the former ASU quarterback who's become a rising star on Coach Kingsbury's coaching staff.
Yeah, and of course, we want to hear from you, Bird Gang. Text us at 602-444-1212. Give us your season predictions. Let us know how you're feeling about the team, and we'll be reading through some of your messages a little later in the show. But we are also asking you in tonight's interactive Bullhorn question, what part of the Cardinals worries you the most this season, Luke?
Yeah, we have a couple options there. The first one, pass rush. B will be D-Hop suspension. C, cornerbacks. And D, surprisingly, 43% of the vote right now, coaching. Interesting. Go ahead and log on to 12news.com/Bullhorn to cast your vote, or use the 12 News app, and we will check in with your responses throughout the show.
But we start with tonight's opening kickoff.
I gotta tell you, my immediate concern, for me at least, has to be the pass rush, right? No more Chandler Jones, Jordan Hicks out of the picture, and Marcus Golden, who's claimed he's being underpaid, which he is. In fact, Matt Prater has a higher cap hit than Golden himself. Now, he's still expected to play week 1, but outside of Golden and J.J. Watt, the Cards will be relying on a lot of youth and prospects that need to develop and develop quickly. Let's hope Golden can reach his 11 sacks he produced last year, or even more, because the team will badly need it.
Another thing we're watching as the Cardinals look ahead to cutting down the 53-man roster by Tuesday afternoon. A crowded wide receiver room right now, but with D-Hop's suspension and Antoine Wesley dealing with a groin/hip injury, I'd anticipate seeing Greg Dortch and Andy Isabella on the active roster to start the season. They've both been training camp and preseason standouts. You saw it right here on 12 News. They're both receiving high praise from coaches and peers like A.J. Green.
Andy, Dortch, those guys, man, I go home and tell my wife every day about these, how they work, how they don't complain. They just come out there and work each day, man. That makes me want to work every day, you know what I mean? Because you got guys like that, and, you know, they time is coming. Dortch time is definitely coming.
And now it's time for more on the Cardinals offense heading into the 2022 season. We're taking it out to Nashville with Team 12's Cameron Cox and the voice of the Cardinals, Ron Wolfley.
Ron, first of all, we have not seen any of the starters at all in the preseason. The chance for them to play the Titans, or the practice against the Titans, your observation was what from that one practice?
Yeah, you know, it was really cool, Cam, because I thought the Arizona Cardinals had the best team period I've seen them have all of training camp. They were crisp, they were concise, the tempo was fantastic. So it's just that it's getting that competitive edge. And that's the reason why, man, I wish they would have been able to do it on Thursday as well and not just Wednesday.
Just wanted to see more. Now we have to wait almost 2 weeks before Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs roll into town. Let's get to this offense. Up front, what do you make of this O-line?
This is a Super Bowl caliber team in terms of talent. DeAndre Hopkins and Hollywood Brown together, Rondale Moore, of course, A.J. Green, James Conner, Zach Ertz. You're jam-packed with talent. But it's going to come down to the offensive line, Cam. I really do believe that. You don't need the best offensive line in the National Football League to win. You don't. What you need is an offensive line that is good enough to allow your talent to show their talent, especially when you're talking about playing in the NFC West, when twice a year you're playing against Aaron Donald.
Yeah. And we've all seen recently some of the things Aaron Donald can do. Not good, by the way, I'm just saying. And the good thing about that O-line, Wolf, they've had years together outside of Will Hernandez. I mean, those guys have been together 2-3 years up front. So that's a good thing when you're building that continuity on the O-line. When you look at the playmakers that you mentioned, who needs to have the biggest year?
I'm going to say Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown, man. Listen, Kyler Murray, we all know you need your quarterback to go out and play well. I think it's Hollywood Brown because of what he can do to a defense without the ball. Anytime you got that kind of speed out there, what happens to the secondary? The defensive coordinator is yelling, back up, get off of them, get off. What does that do for a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, who is a master of running the short and intermediate routes? What does that do for Zach Ertz over the middle when those safeties are playing a couple yards deeper because Hollywood Brown is on the outside? What does that do? It opens up and creates space. The windows get bigger for Kyler Murray because of one dude who has the ability to run by everybody else, and you can throw him the ball and it's a 70-yard touchdown. That's huge. So I think he might actually hold the key without D-Hop being in the lineup.
Steve Keim, the only GM to ever drop an Outcast reference, bombs over Baghdad, in a press conference too, by the way. Wolf, get you out here on this. Kyler Murray got that big contract. Have you seen a different Kyler in camp?
Yes, I have. More assertive. And also, I would say, it's a weird word to use, grateful. Watching the way he interacted with fans, I thought it was great. The fact that he would stay an hour after practice. He did this on a couple of days. I know you saw that as well. And I thought that was really, really significant right there. It certainly, I think, was a change from what we've seen in the past. But when I think about it, this is still a young guy. He's still a young guy. He's still developing. He's still growing. And hopefully we're going to see more of this as his career unfolds.
Wolf, thanks for the time, buddy.
Right on, man.
Thank you, gentlemen. And another question mark entering the season, wideout DeAndre Hopkins, as we spotlight his 6-game absence in tonight's player profile. Okay, so we know this Cardinals offense can be very potent, but the first 6 weeks could be a different story without DeAndre Hopkins in the lineup due to his PED suspension. It's a tough reality, but D-Hop is still having faith in his men until his return.
For something like that to happen, to me, obviously, I was shocked. Anytime I'm not on the field, for me, it's frustrating. It's the NFL, next man up. So, I have no doubt in those guys to win those 6 games until I'm ready.
So what exactly will life without D-Hop look like? I tell you what, the Cards will not get a break Week 1 against Pat Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Yet, it is a very different team from a season ago. Gone are 2 of the core pieces from the KC roster and speedster Tyreek Hill, who's now in Miami, and the heart of the Chiefs defense in Tyrann Mathieu. But there's still a weakness if you look close enough in L'Jarius Sneed in the Chiefs secondary. This group gives up a lot in yards per attempt and features a lot of youth, something K1 should be able to take advantage of. And speaking of, when you have Murray on your side, one of the most dangerous dual threats in the league, anything is possible, not to mention the addition of Hollywood Brown. The field should open up, giving Murray much more room to use his legs. Week 2, things get a little awkward for the Cards. Remember Chandler Jones? Yeah, well, he's a Raider now. See, it is a little awkward, right? I'm not a fan of the silver and black on him, but I don't think he minds after signing a 3-year, $52 million deal. So the Cards will have to face their all-time leader in sacks and then some. And looking at both the pros and cons of this matchup, the Raiders got a little more juice with Jones and adding all-pro wideout Davante Adams in the offseason. I can see the Cards struggling to contain him like any team in the NFL. But on the flip side, the Raiders have one of the worst rushing defenses, which could bode very well for both James Conner and K1 on the ground. And how lucky for the Cards, because Week 3, the difficulty only ramps up as they get the defending champs in the Los Angeles Rams. The analysis, it's actually pretty simple with this one. The Rams have Aaron Donald. The Cardinals do not. The Rams have Cooper Kupp. The Cardinals have D-Hop on the sidelines. And if history tells us anything, LA wins this game as the Rams are 10-1 against the Cards ever since Sean McVay took over as head coach. So I think it's safe to say we can chalk this game up as a loss. And when you look at the final 3 games of D-Hop's suspension, well, the Panthers are the Panthers, as are the Eagles, and the Seahawks with no more Russell Wilson, I think they win that game. So with that being said, I can see Arizona going 3-3, maybe 4-2 in this stretch, and if they do, this team will have some scary confidence with one of the NFL's best playmakers returning with something to prove.
Coming up on your Cardinals Locker Room season preview show, 2 Sun Devils walk into Lena's Lounge. Stay with me here because we're catching up with a former ASU quarterback turned Cardinals coaching assistant, Mike Bercovici.
Plus, we head into the backfield and go one-on-one with running back James Conner as we talk life on and off the football field and his expectations for the 2022 campaign.
And up next, we shift to the defensive side of the ball and just how much of a problem do the Cards have when it comes to the corners.
Logic would say they're going after a veteran corner, right? But we've been saying that for 4 months. What's wrong with just Marco Wilson, Byron Murphy, and Isaiah Simmons as you run sort of a nickel package as your base?
And we want to hear from you, Bird Gang. Text us at 602-444-1212. Give us your name and where you're from. We'll be reading some of your reactions to the preseason or the regular season coming up next on your Cardinals Locker Room.
When DeAndre Hopkins comes back in Week 7, this could be exactly the lift this team needs. It's just a matter of how do you stay in contention through those first 6 weeks.
I tend to agree there. Coming up a little later in the show, our Cardinals insider Dan Bickley shares what concerns him the most about this team heading into the regular season. So we've previewed the offense. Now let's check out the defensive side of the ball as we send it down back to Nashville and Cameron Cox, joined by Cardinal insiders Paul Calvisi and Danny Sarek.
Guys, here we go. Danny, we'll start with you. This defense, what position group needs to step up more?
From what we've seen so far, I think it's really important to see what you have in this cornerbacks room. When you're looking at the fact that you have Byron Murphy and Antonio Hamilton named as your other starter, and he's now dealing with an undisclosed injury, and we're not sure how long that injury might linger. So now Marco Wilson becomes that starter, and so now you have to look at that depth.
Paul, who are they trading for? They got to trade for somebody, right? We can't trust a bunch of rookies with this defense.
Yeah, logic would say they're going after a veteran corner, right? But we've been saying that for 4 months. What's wrong with just Marco Wilson, Byron Murphy, and Isaiah Simmons as you run sort of a nickel package as your base? But there are questions in all 3 levels of the defense. But I tell you, if quarterback is number 1 in the NFL, 1B is getting to the quarterback. And that makes your cornerback room look a lot better if you're getting some of that pass rush. So Marcus Golden, presuming he's going to be back from the toe injury, and then Devon Kennard, who talked to him several times, very motivated to show that he's back to being a legit starter in this league. And then Dennis Gardeck, really explosive, really productive. He's been a real problem in the 2 preseason games and for the Titans offensive linemen. And then the most improved guy in this camp for me, I know a lot of people would argue Andy Isabella. To me, it's Victor Dimukeji. And he's been legit against the run and getting to the quarterback. I'm real curious to see what he's all about in year 2.
Danny, the number one question I get asked from fans is, what about Zaven Collins? If you don't mention him at a practice, somebody's like, what did he do? What did he do? What have you seen from Zaven this camp?
I think that you've seen Zaven look more comfortable now that he's in year 2. The fact that he's not, there's not that pressure, that he's got that speaker in his helmet calling the plays on defense. The fact that he is feeling more comfortable, which we've heard from the coaching staff, we've heard from him, that it doesn't feel like he's reacting as much and thinking so much. It feels a lot more natural to him. And that's what you want going into year 2. That's what you want from a player who you're hoping that you can get more snaps out of consistently throughout the entire season, something that he didn't get last year.
Paul, you mentioned Isaiah Simmons. The other day against the Titans, we saw him line up as edge rusher. We saw him line up in the middle. We saw him line up at center field, at slot cornerback. I mean, they're literally probably going to use him all over the field like they did at Clemson, right?
Yeah, and you know what? From day one, they've said, we're going to run him at inside linebacker. Don't believe it. The defensive coach.
There you go. You heard it finally. Don't believe it.
They've been sandbagging since day one. We've seen him at a half dozen different positions, and I think that's the most effective way to use him. He's not great at inside linebacker in the straight-ahead run game. That's not his game. He's better in space. And if a quarterback breaks the huddle and says, wait a minute, where's number 9? He is the X factor. So he's the guy they're going to dial up. But I expect him to be a 3-down player. It's just where is he every single down? And as for Zaven Collins, you know what? I've seen him be pretty good in coverage, backs and tight ends. It's against the run that I think he still struggles a little bit with the instincts. Nick Vigil, I would expect to be your middle linebacker, honestly, to start, and they'll just continue to work Zaven Collins in accordingly.
Interesting. Danny, up front on that defensive line, who needs to stand out up there?
So J.J. Watt is not out here in Tennessee dealing with COVID, but Zach Allen has continued to step up, and it can't just be the two of them.
Paul, because we haven't seen this D-line really be productive since the days of Calais Campbell. Like, it's been a few years since defensive linemen up front for the Cardinals have contributed game after game.
I'll tell you, though, last year when J.J. Watt was healthy, Cardinals are 7-0 for a reason. He is the rising tide that lifts that entire defense. Zach Allen has looked really good. We learned that he's played most of last year with a really banged up foot. He couldn't even walk on a Monday, and he would play on Sunday. And so if those two guys can stay healthy, and then you get the rotation that Danny talked about with some of the younger guys to keep them fresh.
Are we keeping J.J. away from snakes? Is that the theme of the season? No one's played that prank on him yet? No one's put a fake snake in his locker?
That's interesting. I might pull that on Paul, actually.
That's not bad. I've fallen for that on the golf course more than once. The fake rubber snake in the golf cart, oh yeah, I fall for it every time. Yeah. So I have empathy for J.J. Watt. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm feeling him.
Guys, thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
And coming up later in the show, we'll hear from our insiders as they will give their final season predictions of this year's team. Up next, we're going to break down the rest of the NFC West, where for the Cardinals to have their own parade, they must knock off the defending Super Bowl champions.
And this week in Lena's Lounge, we're catching up with former Sun Devil quarterback Mike Bercovici, who's making the transition from player to coach with the Cardinals.
You have to learn what it means to be a coach. I mean, you're like an educator, a teacher. I mean, you're not really one of the guys. You can't be exactly one of the guys. You're not in the locker room anymore, per se.
I'm Isaiah Simmons, and you're watching Cardinals Locker Room on 12 News.
Welcome back. So we've broken down the Cards, but what about the other three rivals residing in the NFC West? Well, it starts nowhere else than in the heart of LA, the defending champs in the Rams. They will try to become the first Super Bowl team to repeat since the Patriots went back-to-back in 2004. That isn't a crazy thought, especially when you look at who's still on the roster. Yes, Von Miller, Robert Woods are gone, but Aaron Donald, Matt Stafford, and Cooper Kupp are alive and well, along with Jalen Ramsey leading the secondary. We'll have to watch Stafford's elbow tendonitis, though, but if he does stay healthy, this team is indeed a big threat.
Now, let's take a look at the 49ers. Second-year quarterback Trey Lance was given the keys to the offense. He's got Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and former Sun Devil Brandon Ayuk at his disposal, and they've still got that nasty D-line anchored by Nick Bosa and Eric Armstead. Cliff Kingsbury, though, got the best of his buddy Kyle Shanahan last season, going 2-0, but they're 3-3 head-to-head since 2019. The Cards won't face the Niners until the second half of the season in weeks 11 and 18.
As for the Seahawks, it's a very different team than what we've been used to seeing, right? No more Russell Wilson. That takes away their biggest weapon, which I believe will leave them at the bottom of the division. He's on to the Broncos. Bobby Wagner has also moved on, and while DK Metcalf is always a threat, the Cardinals should be able to sweep this team this upcoming season. Is that a bold take? Maybe, but it's an opponent like this the Cards have to take care of, considering their expectations.
Now, football fans in the Valley typically refer to former Arizona State quarterback Mike Bercovici by his nickname, simply Berco. But the 29-year-old has earned the title of offensive assistant on the Cardinals coaching staff, working with the tight ends, and his football journey continues here in the desert. We're catching up with the former Sun Devil star in this week's edition of Lena's Lounge. We've been watching you essentially grow up from your time at ASU, now with the Cardinals, and now you're pretty much calling Arizona home.
Yeah, no, it's been closing on the door on 10 years here, so it's been amazing. I mean, I truly feel like Arizona's home for me. I mean, I think back to like my college days, and now I have to remember like how many years ago I was there. So it's pretty amazing being back here and staying in the city.
Yeah, well, we of course have to talk about your time at ASU and the legacy you left there. Coach is actually talking about your name carrying a lot of weight in Scottsdale. No. Is that true?
No, I mean, there's certain things like I don't spend too much time in like the city of Tempe around campus now, but you know, there's certain places. I mean, I was a roommate with DJ Foster. DJ, he was a celebrity, but there's a couple places here and there, you know, people kind of shout your name out, but out here, I'm just grinding and keeping my head down.
Right now, we're also seeing kind of a throwback to Camp T, and we know that you spent many years up there. Do you have any untold stories from Camp T?
My favorite thing about Camp T was like, I can vividly remember like wet jerseys every night. We'd like hang our laundry out there. Like the operation was never clean. But everybody you would talk to, the former players, they'd say, oh man, we used to have it so much worse than you guys. And now I look at what they're doing now. I think they spend like maybe a day up there, and all I want to think about is say, you know, like, hey, I had it so much worse than you guys. So that's the fun part. But it's pretty special that they're going up there. I mean, what they've done with that renovation of that place is pretty special, and I know it means a lot to the entire community of ASU.
What have you learned most over your time here with the Cardinals?
I mean, I've learned a lot. I mean, since I got here in 2020, which was an incredible entry to this whole thing and the way that it started. But I mean, I've learned a lot about like humility and like Coach Kingsbury. You know, everything that he does, he treats everybody with so much respect. And you learn that like on the young coaching side, like you have to earn the respect of a lot of people, not only like your peers, your staff, the players, the people around the buildings. At first it was hard. I mean, like transitioning from a player to a coach. I mean, it's definitely like you have to learn what it means to be a coach. I mean, you're like an educator, a teacher. I mean, you're not really one of the guys, you can't be exactly one of the guys. You're not in the locker room anymore per se. But Coach Kingsbury is extremely routine. Like he's been doing this for so long at the head coaching level that he, you know, every single day looks the same for him. And I've tried to definitely embody that since I've been here.
My last one for you, you're celebrating 1 year of marriage with your wife, who was a former ASU dancer, cheerleader. So it's kind of like the all-American story. What's married life like, and being a dog dad of 2?
Yeah, it's been incredible. I would say, as it relates to around the city, I think my wife, Jaylee, is a lot more famous and like, you know, well known in the area than I am. She's got amazing energy, and a year ago today, it was kind of like we're still like living through our like honeymoon phase, but like I can confidently say, like, you know, moving on to a full year, it's still been awesome. I mean, married life is great. Our dogs have not exactly made us sleep as much as we wanted to, but it's been awesome. I couldn't be more happy about it.
Yeah, well, life is on the up and up for Mike Bercovici, and we're continuing to follow in his career here with the Arizona Cardinals.
Lena, great work as always. Already right around the corner here in your Cardinals locker room, your RB1 is ready to set the tone early for the upcoming season.
You realize that, you know, what it's going to take. You know, being RB1, you got to set the tone. You know, you're the first to set the tone, lead by example, just get started. So I'm excited to embrace that role.
And now we want to know what you have to say, Bird Gang. Do you agree or disagree with what our experts are saying about the Cardinals? Text us and join the conversation. 602-444-1212 is the number. Let us know your name and where you're from. We'll be reading some of your messages live in just a few minutes here on your Cardinals Locker Room. Welcome back to your Cardinals Locker Room season preview. The next time you will see us, it gets real. Join us for the 6th season premiere of your Cardinals Locker Room, Sunday, September 11th, right after the Sunday night football game between the Bucs and the Cowboys. Joining us now, our Cardinals insider, Dan Bickley. No stranger to the Valley, but I think this is going to be an interesting season in a lot of ways for the Cardinals. Are there any concerns when you think about not seeing any of the starters in the preseason games? Is that something fans should be worried about?
It's one of these great conundrums as how do you prepare a football team in 2022 properly? Great NFL coaches like Bill Belichick, Andy Reid, they still expose their starters in preseason games. New age guys like Cliff Kingsbury want no part of it. I think we all know Kyler Murray has no use for preseason football. You shudder to think that the Cardinals defense, which is already kind of wonky to begin with, is going to go into an opening week game against the Kansas City Chiefs without any real live tackling, without any like callous to them at all. And yet at the same time, you understand you don't want to risk players in meaningless football games. So you just cross your finger and hope it works. This offense, when DeAndre Hopkins comes back in week 7, this could be a Super Bowl caliber type offense. This defense is terribly underfunded. When I last checked, they ranked 32nd in the NFL in the amount of spending that they put on the defense, which, by the way, would be dead last. I get the feeling they're playing a dangerous game defensively. They're putting a lot of stock in Vance Joseph being able to kind of scheme a pass rush and get creative and stop teams with X's and O's. That only goes so far in the NFL, so I am concerned about the defense.
But you also talked about DeAndre Hopkins. He's not going to be around for the first 6 games, so how much does he impact this team in the backstretch of the season?
To me, when you look at the way the Cardinals have collapsed in the back half of the last 2 seasons, there's a reason for it, and that reason remains a mystery. A lot of people like myself think that it's because the offense does not continue to evolve. It does not continue to change, thereby allowing other defenses and defensive coordinators to catch up to them. So when DeAndre Hopkins comes back in Week 7, this could be exactly the lift this team needs. It's just a matter of how do you stay in contention through those first 6 weeks. Can you as an offense function at a winning level in the NFL without him and then really maximize his return?
We're also going to see the Hard Knocks cameras parachuting in on the back end of the season. Maybe they will have an answer to the mystery of the, falling short in the back end.
Well, that's a great point, because if you're watching the Hard Knocks that's running now, Dan Campbell, the head coach of the Detroit Lions, absolutely charismatic, the way he inspires his players, the way he talks to his players. I am so curious to see that side of Cliff Kingsbury, because he's really buttoned up when it comes to dealing with us in the media. He's gotten better this year. He's opened up a little bit. This is really intrusive. This is giving people a real look of what's going on behind closed doors. And to your point, I think just human nature, having these cameras follow you around, it's going to keep you sharper than otherwise. You're going to be on your game a little more.
Yeah, they're going to be on their P's and Q's.
A little bit.
Of course, we're going to have Dan Bickley joining us throughout the season as our Cardinals insider. Thank you so much.
You got it, Lena.
That mid-season Hard Knocks, I can't wait. Also, don't sleep on this guy. Running back James Conner, or he'll run you over. Number 6 proved his worth last year, splitting carries with with Chase Edmonds, I should say. But now he is the clear-cut RB1. And when it comes to his high touchdown production, he says he's shooting for more. I love it. It's time to dig deeper with the bell cow back as I go one-on-one with him in tonight's Cardinal Spotlight. When training camp finally comes to a close, is there like a sense of joy amongst the locker room, or is it still the focus, or what is that vibe like between all the teammates?
Yeah, it's some of all of that. The vibes are high for sure with training camp being over, but that's just because we're getting close to the real action. And just competing versus somebody else instead of going versus each other all day, and the meetings and everything that comes with the training camp. But we're excited to get the show rolling.
We know you love to catch the football, not just run it.
What a catch! James Conner!
I think you only had 2 drops last season, I believe. How much do you envision yourself doing that again this time around for the season?
I'm trying to take it to a new level. I feel like I'm confident in my ability to catch the ball. So I want to have 0 drops and just make plays out in space. Doesn't have to be carry specifically just 1 touches.
And we know you're settling more here in the Valley. I know Pittsburgh, that's been home to you for a long time. We were talking about this off camera. Do you feel like you've settled into Arizona now? How you like in the Valley of the Sun? I know it's a little different than Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it's a lot different for sure, but I'm definitely feeling settled, having a year underneath my belt. The people out here, they embrace me, man. It's the vibes out here, they're high. Weather's great.
Just a little hot.
Yeah, it's hot for sure. But no, I'm loving this team, and I'm loving the state.
Would you say the West Coast is the best coast?
You ask me that often. I'm going back to the East Coast. But I love both. I want to be able to have a house out here still for always, and a house on the East Coast. That's where my family's at.
You had the 2nd most touchdowns last year. I believe you had 18 compared to the league leader in 20. Can we expect to see more of that in 2022?
Man, my personal goals are just to stay disciplined, stay focused, and stay consistent. When I do all that, the touchdowns, the yards, the wins, everything, accolades, Pro Bowl, that all takes care of itself. But definitely can see a lot of touchdowns this year.
Yeah, your body feeling good too? That's a big workload.
Yeah, body's feeling good. And we also got plenty of capable backs, man. We're going to see a lot of backs out there making plays.
How do you approach the game as kind of that RB1? Do you approach it any differently, or what's that mindset for you, knowing kind of the role is a little different this year?
You realize that what it's going to take. Being RB1, you got to set the tone. You're the first to set the tone, lead by example, just get it started. So I'm excited to embrace that role and take it to new levels.
How do you feel this team's coming together, from the start of training camp now to the end with the season quickly approaching? How do you feel the team has maybe grown over the past few months?
We just, we're still working towards that, and that's going to be from week 1 all the way, to the Super Bowl. It's that camaraderie, everything. We're just growing and maturing as one, and it's an ongoing process. And that's the number 1 thing, is just competing and still be family at the end of it.
When you look at the team now, what do you think is different this time around compared to last year that maybe think gives your team an even better chance to go even further this year?
We've added pieces. We had a good draft class and the free agents that we got. trades we made, but just refocusing, realizing how close we were last year, but just how much more work we have to do.
Right around the corner, we're hoping to make some money. Stick around for your best Cardinals bets for Week 1 of the season.
EasyMillionMeals.org.
Welcome back. It's time to track the trends and see what people on social media are saying about the Arizona Cardinals in 2022. I asked the Bird Gang on the Bird app who they're most excited to see during the regular season. So let's see what you had to say. Our friend Chris here says, having the second hardest schedule, I can't wait to see Brady, Mahomes, and Herbert. So we're going with a non-Cardinals angle with who they're excited to see because all of those quarterbacks are coming to State Farm Stadium this season. Also mentioning Aaron Donald, unfortunately, we do have to see him, but we're going to see what else the Bird Gang had to say, who we're looking forward to seeing this year. Of course, the connection between K1 and Hollywood Brown, old Oklahoma buddies. Hope we can be super explosive. Also, the defense as a whole hopefully can show what they did through the first 7 weeks of the season. Aaron, I agree with you. Hopefully, we see some action on the defensive side of the ball because we know that the Cardinals will be without one of their biggest offensive weapons in DeAndre Hopkins, but they do have Hollywood Brown there to fill that void. Thank you all for weighing in. Stay with us throughout the regular season to see more of the trends we're going to track. Luke?
You know what that sound means. Time to hopefully make some money in another edition of The Odds Couple. Alrighty, all my sports bettors, this is where things start to get a little more serious here on The Odds Couple. The Cardinals preseason is now in the rear view, which means there's no more playing around. The stars are coming out to play, just like our betting analyst, Jared Smith. Jared, welcome.
Why so serious, Luke?
You see
Why so serious, bud?
You're our star of the show. We are relying on you to make some money. We appreciate your time and insight, as always, and let's waste no time. Let's get right to it. Week 1, we got a juicy matchup between the Cardinals and the high-powered Kansas City Chiefs. Now, each book varies, but roughly Vegas has KC on the money line at around minus 160, while the Cards, a little plus money at plus 130. Then you have the spread set at 3.5, while the over-under, that's my favorite personally, at 53.5. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. So, Jared, which of those three do you like the most? And I hope you're kind to the Red Sea here with your response.
So we'll see. Early in the season, better chance I'll be kinder to the Cardinals because we talked about it last time. Cliff Kingsbury's record early in the season has been very good. When Kyler Murray is healthy, things are very good. It opened on that very key number of 3, and we've seen it move now to 3.5. So some of the smarter bettors, at least here in town, do think Kansas City's going to cover. And I'll be honest, I think if I was going to play this from a spread perspective, I would take the 3.5 with Arizona in week